Hello and welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan,
I'm Nathan.
and this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I talk about anything at all, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. Nathan, I was at my local produce store the other day
hmm
looking at the vegetables, and somebody was looking at some tomatoes actually, and they said, "Can you believe these tomato prices?" And I said, "I know, right? These things are expensive." And they
hmm
said, "You know what's a better deal is the Patreon for Drive-In Double Feature, where Nathan and Ryan talk about movies, have fun conversation. They play some games. They just have a great time over there at Patreon. And for only $5 a month, I would gladly pay that over these crappy tomatoes. And it doesn't affect any regular content." And they said, I really wish Nathan and Ryan knew how much we love their podcast. And I just
hmm
said, I think they know.
I think they know.
And
That's what I would say.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, it's only $5 a month, doesn't affect any regular content. Go check it out over on the Patreon. But today we are talking about 1988's Return of the Killer Tomatoes, which is directed by John DeBello. This movie is a sequel to Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, a movie that we covered a long time ago, like before Drive-In Double Feature podcast. And we both liked it, from what I remember. We both
hmm
liked it. It was an enjoyable comedy. Some jokes were not great, but for the most part, we had a good time,
I
from what I
think,
remember.
yeah, because I listened to it before I re-uploaded it, and I think we both had a lot of fun with it, despite some jokes not landing. It was a movie with heart. That's what I remember. It was a movie that was just like really fun and had some heart behind it, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think like what that one was trying to do is like they played it like almost like it was a regular sci-fi movie, except they had some jokes and stuff into it. This
hmm
one is full on zany comedy, like a la like Airplane or any of those other types of movies like the Zucker brothers did, because it's very much like anything that can happen will happen, like as long as like
hmm
the joke it is in on it. Um, and this movie is 10 years after the last one. It does continue the story, and we do have a couple of returning characters to it. Um, how the movie starts is a really unique way where they kind of do like the TV movie of the week, where it's like this is the one the I forget what the name was, but like the $1 million movie or whatever, or the thousand or something,
Something like that.
and then they start the movie. And they're like, oh, they do like the Pee-wee's Playhouse thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to be calling everybody here. And if they pick up and say the secret word, which is you're going to win a prize. And you're like, obviously that's going to set up something later. But they're like, okay, we're going to put on a Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And then they turn on the movie, and it's like a beach party movie where it's just called like Big
Big.
Breasted Girls Go to the Beach and Take Their Tops Off.
Yeah, and you think, and then it has just like scenes of them like in bikinis and taking them off. It doesn't show it, but then like it's like, wait, this week, Return of the Killer Tomatoes is supposed to be playing, and I like that he's like, I like this one better.
Yeah, they're just like, well, yeah, but we played it 3 times already.
Fine.
And they're like, fine. And if you listen to that movie, like that, it's like they make like an original song just for like that movie. It's like
Yeah.
big breasted girls go to the beach and take their tops off. And it's just,
And the song comes back at the end of the movie.
yeah. So it's just really funny that it's just like they just put in all this work. But I was like, you know what? I would watch that movie.
We probably would have covered it by now.
Yeah. But yeah, they do start Return of the Killer Tomatoes, and it does go back into John Ashton, which is Sean Astin's father, excuse me.
Mhm.
And you may remember him. He was Gomez on the Addams Family,
The original Addams
the
Family, the
original
show.
Gomez. Yes. And how it works is he's doing some experiments on tomatoes, and that if you play a certain song, they can transform into humans, and they can transform back into humans if they play isn't it Beethoven?
Yeah, the banana. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he plays Beethoven, they turn back into tomatoes.
I
And
like to think
his,
the Bee Gees, the disco version.
they should have played that. Like, can you imagine if they played that? That would probably work.
Oh, no, I think it would be funny, yeah, especially because it's the late '80s. The
Yeah,
disco had been dead for a while then.
yeah. And they don't, because that's like the second time the movie has used, or like the franchise has used music, because in the first movie they do defeat the tomatoes by playing one song called Puberty Love.
Yes, yeah.
And
Which was I remember listening to that, and I think you said that the drummer for like Pearl Jam is like worked on that song.
wow, I
Or
can't
some,
remember
maybe
that.
not Pearl Jam, but some famous band. Um, I don't
That's
know.
funny.
Yeah, but yeah, which is funny. Puberty Love comes back up because this movie does a recap with clips of the first movie, and this is how you know this movie just is not taking itself seriously. And this is like when meta jokes are actually funny. They actually work
Yeah.
here, because they're like, oh, this just seems like a cheap clip show, so you can save money.
But yeah, that's what because they're playing like the clips of the first movie, and they do somebody calling in to like the movie channel or
Hmm.
whatever, and just being like, it's like, yeah, is this a new movie or what? You guys have just been playing nothing but clips from the first movie. It feels like it's just like a cheap knockoff, like you're just like
Yeah.
doing it, and they're just like, oh no, wrong call, and just hang up on them.
Exactly, yeah. Which I think is so funny. And that's just a recurring theme of this movie is just how cheap it is how low budget this whole movie is. And there's something I love about that. And a joke that gets set up early that really pays off later, and it's a small one, is you notice everything they're drinking and eating is off brand. It says
Hmm.
cola or beer on the can, and that's it. And I noticed that, and then it later gets paid off really well.
They do a lot of those joke payoffs. Like they
Hmm.
set up a lot of jokes in the first act, and then they pay them
Hmm.
off much later.
Hmm.
Where because they do the phone thing that I just mentioned, and that gets brought up later. And then another one, um, when the movie picks up, and the movie picks up afterwards in the town, and we see right away is that George Clooney is in this movie.
Yeah, some one-off actor.
Yeah,
No Anthony
he's just
Stark.
no, just some guy they pulled off the street, and
I do have to wonder if George Clooney does he talk about this movie at all? Does he care about the perception of this movie?
I I would think he doesn't like talking about it. That's what I imagine, anyways. I don't know that for a fact,
He looks like
but
he's having fun.
he looks like he's having a great like. It's one thing I will say. Like we George Clooney's in this.
Hmm.
He's not anything like exceptional or anything. He's just like
No.
the side. He's like the sidekick character, but he's like he just has like this energy like about him,
Yeah, he's got the star power.
or he's just like this guy's gonna be big, and
Yeah.
just and because even though like he's not the star of the movie, like he's immediately got just like this charisma that you can't deny.
Hmm.
And anyway, the when he's in the pizza parlor, he like throws up a pizza and it doesn't come down, and
Yeah.
then it does pay off later in the movie.
Which
But
is
see the
so
thing,
funny because I'll just say what happens. But in the end of the movie, they make the joke to the cameras like everything pays off in the end. And I think George Clooney goes, "Not everything." And then the pizza crust lands on him, and he goes,
it's just like,
"Everything." I don't know.
yeah,
I love that bit.
it was funny, I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but the gimmick is that it's been a while since the Great Tomato War, and because of this, tomatoes are outlawed.
Hmm.
Like nobody eats tomatoes, nobody uses tomatoes in any form of cooking or anything like that. And like I said, they run a pizza parlor, but the gimmick is they don't use tomatoes at all.
Yeah, it's like
And
chocolate sauce, peanut butter,
it's like,
anchovies.
yeah, it's like because you like that's how the movie starts is the main character Anthony Stark, who we have covered in another movie. He was in what he was I can't remember which James Bond he was in.
Oh God, he was in
He was
License
in
to
License to
Kill.
Kill. That's right. He was in License to Kill. immediately after this movie, somebody watched Return of the Killer Tomatoes and said, Tubby Broccoli is like, get
There
him
he
in
is.
this movie.
That sounds like Cubby. On from what I've seen from documentaries, it's like that's the one. I need him.
So yeah, so he is in one of those movies. So he goes over to um John Aston's like mansion, and he runs into Tara, which is a girl like who is a tomato, but he doesn't
Yeah.
realize that.
Oh yeah, he's in love with the tomato, doesn't know it, but yes, because the mad scientist can turn tomatoes into humans with music, and she's one of them.
Yeah, she's one of them. And that's like the gimmick though. Like he shows up, he's like, one, cheese, pepperoni, sausage, and boysenberry sauce. It just
Silly.
sounds disgusting.
Yeah. Oh
And
no, all those pizzas they look like slop. They look so
yeah,
nasty.
and everyone's just like, good. And just
Yeah,
um
and everyone hates tomatoes. They are tomato racist. They can't stand them.
well, like here's the thing. Like, and I don't know if this is well, it's gotta be the joke, is that the movie, like Anthony Stark and George Clooney are like they're like, oh, like we've never had tomatoes before. Like we don't know what that was like because we weren't
Mhm.
around during that time. And I'm like, well, it was only like 10 years.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was
like
thinking.
and it's like, you really never ate a tomato or like had spaghetti or pizza like when you were like 10?
hmm No, no, they've just never had one before, or which is a little silly. It makes you think like, do they say 10 years ago, or is it supposed to be like
They
just sometime later?
I don't think they say how long it's been because they act like it's been like a really long time because there was like somebody else where like he's like, oh, the tomato war that was ages ago type of
Hmm
thing. So I don't think they say specifically, and I think that's kind of like the joke that it's been like a really long time between
Yeah,
like the last one. But we do get one returning character, or at least well, we get two technically, but like the main
yeah.
returning character is Finletter, the war hero type character, the guy with his parachute that was constantly out from the first movie. He's
hmm
back, and he's the owner of the pizza parlor. And the thing is like they don't even mention Mason or anything like that from the first movie because even though Mason was the one that did everything, like
hmm
they had like these big like news clippings, and it's like Finletter like war hero saves the day, and I'm like he didn't do anything, like he like messed everything up.
Yeah, he was always screwing around with his dang parachute. No, which he brings out again later in the movie.
Well, yeah, and the main thing is like the bad guy from the first Attack of the Killer Tomatoes does return, but he died in the first movie. Finletter stabbed him.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, because Mason, like the press secretary, he was about to like say like what his evil plan was and how he did it, and then like
hmm
Finletter just stabs him. And anyway, he's that guy's back, which he doesn't really play like a big part, and he's just kind of like at the prison. And but it's funny because when they go to the prison, it's like this big, like rich person prison, and like they're all
hmm
playing golf, and they hand him champagne. He's like, "This is domestic. This is disgusting." And
Yeah.
uh, and they set up all the other characters, and like they do, and John Aston does have an Igor character, which you think
hmm
it's going to be like this like deformed person or whatever, but instead it's like this really handsome guy that wants to be a newscaster.
Yeah, this like he's kind of like a buff guy, but he in his room he has like a Dan Rather pictures on the wall and like other famous like
Yeah,
news anchors, and he talks to his bear. That's actually one of my favorite ones. Is like he's interviewing the bear like for a fake news thing in the mirror, and he said, "Can you tell me who died?" And the bear
like
goes,
mom.
"Mommy," and he's like,
He's like,
"Oh, tough luck, kid," or something
yeah,
like that.
tough break, kid. It's like, Yeah, that was really funny. I
Yeah,
I mean that's like what his bits were like some of my favorite parts because he just
I
like
agree.
he really wants to be on the news and like
Hmm.
he would always have like news references like the doctor told him to get in the truck and they're like okay go follow him in the truck. He's like you mean the BTV news band? He's like I don't care what you call it, just get out of here.
Yeah.
Right? And because like he always like films himself like pretending like he's a newscaster. And
Hmm.
he's like, all right, I'll go get her. Formula at 11. Or just,
Yeah, and it's funny because he has one locally that he looks up to who's like a complete like asshole. He's like interviewing because tomatoes
yeah.
in a diner later. And he's interviewing a woman and why she's so scared. But then like he's like, "Why are you here alone?" And he just like
He's
digs
like,
deeper and he calls her like fat.
he's like, it's like, late. It's like, wait a minute, you're here alone? It's Friday night. Couldn't you get a date? And she's like, well, my husband, he's dead. He's like, when did your husband die? He's like,
Oh
he
yeah.
died in the tomato war. It's like, lady, that was ages ago. Like, what's your problem? Have
Well,
you
I
ever
think he
heard?
even says like, "Oh yeah, he probably killed himself" or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. He's like, when's the last time you've seen your feet or whatever? She's like, and she's just
So
like,
mean.
ah, she's like screams and runs off. He's like, obviously too distraught to task
Yeah, and
to
he's like,
talk.
let's ask
And,
someone else. Hey, Big Nose.
yeah, that guy, he was really funny. That part
Hmm.
was. But yeah, they anyway, like Tara ends up running away from Professor Gangrene, and she ends up taking a fuzzy tomato named FT, which is like a
FT.
little like a plushy like tomato that moves and like just like garbles and all that. So,
Yeah, it has like little
but
feet.
yeah, that's like they're like they're trying to be like real cutesy and have like give like the movie a mascot pretty much. And
Yeah, and they play into that so well.
yeah, they make like a big deal where it's just like, oh yeah, like we're just like at the end of the movie, it's like you and your family will not be disappointed if you get an FT doll today. Like, and please, you can get it outside of this theater, or please ask any of your local toy stores.
To supply the FT dolls because FT ends up becoming the hero of the movie. He ends up
Yeah,
saving the day.
yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
Um,
But yeah, Tara shows up at the bar and or not the bar, the pizza place, and tries to sleep with the main character, and I guess it happens. I guess he sleeps
they
with a
do,
tomato. Yeah.
they do. Well, because she says oh, like I'm programmed to do cooking, cleaning, and perform 65 like different sexual acts or whatever. It's like,
I think
and
later
she's
in the
like,
movie.
she's just no, though she's like in the pizza parlor. It's like, how about we go back to your place and I give you a blowjob? And he's just like, ah,
Yeah,
like,
he's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?"
yeah,
Yeah, and I love that later it's like shown that like she does weird things because he's like later he's like you got to see what she can do with multiple milk jugs or something
yeah.
like that. It's
Well,
crazy.
they they do confirm that he sleeps with her because like she wakes like she's George Clooney shows up the next day after she comes over and spends the night, and then
Hmm.
she's just like, "Hey, did you enjoy the sex last night?" And he's just like, and it's just like,
Yeah, which is I think that whole bit's funny where they have like a romantic relationship and there's the montage with the mime that's chasing after them, which what a
yeah,
joke.
that was funny. And she's really obsessed with bread too, like
Yeah, and
toast.
toasters. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's like, all right, I'll make you breakfast. I'll make you toast, eggs, bacon, toast, waffles, and toast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think I think everybody here is surprisingly funny. I don't think there's a single like dud person in this movie.
No, I don't think so. Everyone's pulls in their pretty funny performances, and this movie's actually rated higher than the first movie.
Is it? Which I think I agree. I think I like it better than the first movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. So this one was like an early favorite. I never explained it, but like this was an early favorite for me. I've seen this movie a lot.
Oh, okay, got you.
So I've watched this movie way more than I did the first one because I remember being really fun. I had it on VHS. I
Hmm.
remember like we couldn't find it anywhere, so we like bought it at from the video store. Like we
Oh
actually
wow.
paid to like have it. So it was one of those where I was just like, I gotta have this movie, and I watched it a bunch.
Well, that's cool. Good choice. I think this movie is like, if you can't tell, I really liked it. I thought it was a very funny movie. Like, once again, I think this has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like the
Does
first,
it?
yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes, this film holds a score of 0%, which
That's
is which is
ridiculous.
ridiculous. How do you not like this? It's a funny movie. That because the same thing with the first one, people consider that like a horrible movie, but it's almost like the point of the movie just kind of went over people's heads that this is not meant to be taken any remotely seriously.
No, and I'm like, I can't imagine, but at the same time, like I can't imagine somebody watching like this movie and being like, this isn't this isn't good. This is they're trying to be serious, like
No, there's
because it's
no
just
way.
it's so zany and crazy, where it's just like there's no way they actually think that. But um, they one of the funny traits though in the movie is that, like I said, they don't eat tomatoes, and Anthony Stark ends up taking Tara to like a really fancy restaurant,
Hmm.
and she is since she's a tomato, she doesn't like vegetables. She doesn't want to eat vegetables. And like that,
Hmm.
like when he goes to the restaurant, it's like, oh, well, like lately all these like vegetable dishes, like we have some nice like baby corn, like over a bed of lettuce. It's just, and she's like, I don't eat vegetables. It's like I only eat meat. And it's just like, fine, I'll get you a chili dog.
Yeah, a chili dog will do. Yeah, I think yeah. And I love that scene because he's sitting there on his date and he's like, "Oh, I hate tomatoes. Tomatoes are the worst." And of course she's getting pissed about this the whole time.
Yeah.
Um but this movie gets crazy fast as soon as she's revealed to be a tomato because it becomes like this goose chase of trying to find her because she runs away with FT because I guess FT gets caught. Um
They
and
both get captured at once. Well, no, what happens is like she gets captured with FT, and then
mhm,
Igor throws FT thinking it was just like trash or
that's
whatever.
right. That's right. And then there's the compilation of him getting thrown
Yeah.
around by multiple people.
hmm Um, the other thing too is like I want to mention my funny like the funniest scene for me at
Hmm.
least, and this is a scene like I used to watch all the time. Is like they get to a point in the movie and like they're having like this like exposition dump or whatever, like they're just
Hmm.
talking about like what's gone on in the movie, and then like the director of the movie just like jumps into frame. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's like we got it's like, hey, we've run out of money, we're gonna have to shut down production. And it's like maybe we can come back. I don't know. And it's just like, but then George Clooney's like, hey, like I got an idea. Why don't we just do product placement? Like let's earn some money for this movie.
Hmm.
And then like the SAG, he's like, oh, I'm head of the SAG union, by the way. It's like anybody that's on screen and talks, they get they get paid. It's like I'm speaking on screen right now, so I get paid. Like they get
Yeah,
and,
yeah, go ahead.
and the director's like, nobody else say a word. And then everyone at the same time is like, okay.
So, yeah, that's how everybody gets paid. But that doesn't matter because they go all out for the product placement. I love this because George Clooney's with the guy at the bar, the SAG guy. And it's like, oh, you're looking for a refreshing beer. Try Moore's Head from the North.
That's my favorite
Moosehead.
scene in the movie is the product placement scene and the scene following
Hmm.
that one is like when he shows up and he's just like it's like he's like, you know what I do when I want to drink? I go for a Pepsi Cola. It's like it's the choice of the new generation. He's like, oh wow, that's so great. He's like, but I could use. I'm kind of hungry too. He's like, when I get hungry, I have what was that? Nestle's Crunch Bar. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's like, yeah, but it's so dry. I'm parched, and it's just like you could use a beer, right? Oh yeah, I could use a beer. It's like I go a Moosehead, a
Hmm.
Moose from the north, or get a Foster's from the
From the
south. Good day,
South.
mate. It's like, it's
And
like
then
Chad.
he gets him a Crest
No,
toothpaste.
well, yeah. Anthony Stark shows up, and he's just like, it's like Matt, I got to talk to you. He's like, hey. how about a crest? And he just like smiles at the camera. And like
Yeah.
Anthony Stark is just like, what? Like,
Yeah, I love how he's like not really in on this like the whole
yeah.
time, because even like one point they're having a private conversation and the cameraman just slips a cornflakes box right in front of them, blocking the frame. And then
Yeah.
Anthony Stark is like, "What the hell?" and he throws it like off.
Yeah.
um
And, and then immediately afterwards, like, because they're talking about the events in the movie, and then it just breaks out into like this big brawl because one of the other returning characters was Sam, like the master of the disguise
mhm.
from the first movie. He shows up in the bar as dressed up as Omar Gaddafi,
They start
and
beating the crap out of him.
and then he's like, "Oh my God, it's Omar Gaddafi!" And then just and everyone everyone in the pizza parlor just like breaks out into like this big brawl. It's just like these cowboys shows up and these ninjas, and it's
Yeah,
just like,
it's uh, and then
and
I think Anthony Stark is just like, "Stop everybody out."
yeah, they're all like disappointed, like, "Oh man," just like,
Yeah, I thought the joke there was going to be like another movie set, like they had to like film another movie to get paid or something, but no, that's not what they do. I know, and the product placement keeps up with the rest of the movie, because there's that scene when they have to have the getaway and they're riding on the Honda like ATVs, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's fast and has great acceleration." But then they go to the director and are like, "Do we have to do product placement anymore? We made enough." And they have like all this stuff. They have women all over
they're
them.
rich.
They're not even
Yeah, it's
paying
like they're
attention.
like, "Yeah, yeah, go for it, do whatever you want."
Which it doesn't even end there though, because there's whenever they have the shot of like the outside of the haunted mansion, there's a Pepsi logo on it.
Yeah,
There's small stuff like that still.
yeah, because they were like, there was like little parts too, because like they would have like a painting like set up to be like the mansion, like from like a distance or
hmm
whatever. Yeah,
hmm
but it just there's a lot. I mean, we could go in there talking about all the
Yes.
jokes. Like, I mean, there's a lot of really funny jokes in this movie that I enjoyed. One other standout, 'cause I'm going to skip way ahead here because I don't want to describe the whole thing, but like,
Yeah, we're just recapping
um,
jokes.
but one of my other favorite jokes is when Finletter is in the mansion, and he's trying to be like really quiet and stealthy, and he runs into that bear that Igor has,
hmm
and it's just going, "Mummy, mummy," and like he's like trying to like stuff it, and like like he's like trying to break it so it's the voice box stops, and like the bear's like, "Help, help, murder, murder." It's just like,
Yeah, I thought that was great too.
just yeah. So that was really funny to me, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there. They have a lot of good payoffs to the joke.
hmm
And they even redo one of the jokes they did from the first movie, which is at the very end of the movie, like the post credits,
hmm
when they uh they have giant carrots show up at the end of the movie, like they did at the end of the first Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
Yes, yeah, and then it has the evil scientist going, "See you in Paris," which is a sequel they do later.
They do, and I haven't
Mhm.
seen that one, so I might
Have
have
you
to
seen the
watch
third
that.
one?
I have not.
Okay, maybe one day.
Maybe one day,
hmm
but overall, it's a really good nostalgic trip for me, and to be honest, I was a little worried that it wouldn't have aged well because it has been a while since I've seen this. But I mean, I tell you, I watched this movie a lot as
Yeah,
a kid, so
you were obsessed with this one.
I loved it. I thought it was great. So I was really pleased to see that a lot of the stuff still pretty funny to me.
hmm
I mean, for the most part, I mean, I don't remember anything like exceptionally bad in this movie, to be honest. I mean, I
No.
don't. So, I mean, for me, it's still a lot of fun. I had a good time with it, and I would still give it a recommend.
No, I this is my first time ever watching it, and I really enjoyed it. Like you said earlier, it reminds me of a Zucker Brothers parody movie. It just goes all out. There's so many jokes, and normally I'd be like, "Oh, some don't land," but a surprising amount of these jokes land, and they land really well. I was watching this and laughing the whole time. If you like parody movies like that from this era, this is totally worth watching. It's a really good time. Finally, a
Yeah,
comedy on the
definitely.
show that's actually funny.
I know that's always like our big thing. It's just like we watch like these comedy movies and it's just like, oh, that was bad. That was really
Yeah.
bad,
Mhm.
painful.
Yes, just
So,
miserable.
so really glad to see that. But I think that's going to do it for this one. We're gonna go to our next one. So, Nathan, what are we talking about next time?
Well, Ryan, we are going to be talking about Rolling Thunder from 1977. And then that one is going to be streaming over on Tubi. But Ryan, what are we covering on Thursday?
We are going to be talking about the movie Dead Ringers,
Ooh, fun.
which which is streaming over on Peacock and Amazon Prime and Pluto TV.
You can watch it everywhere. I remember there
You
was
can
a
watch
time where
it.
this movie was hard to find.
Yeah, I have it on DVD, so that's
Okay,
good for
cool.
me. But anyway, thank you once again so much for checking out today's episode. We hope to see you there for our next one. If you have any thoughts and opinions, please email us over at driveanddoubleFeaturePodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/driveanddoubleFeaturePodcast. But until next time.
Until next time.